Next we'll work out illustration number 5, page number 13.15. Nothing new for you to learn actually. Only thing is you should know the nature and whether it is debit or credit balance. Only that you need to learn from this chapter. Okay, so illustration 5, from the following ledger balances you have to do a trial balance as on 31st March 2019. So, we will draw the format first. Give the heading trial balance of Subrata Mukherjee. As on 31st March 2019. The format is heads of accounts, LF, debit, credit. Format is very much important for accountancy. You must have a heading, you must have these column headings. Okay, the first one, fixed assets. Assets will be having a debit balance. So, fixed assets account, debit balance, debit column you write the amount 2,46,000. Then capital account, that is a liability. So, it is having a credit balance 2,50,000. The next one is debtors. Debtors, the name itself says debtors, so it's debit balance, or else what's the meaning? Debtors means from whom we have to receive money, receivable for us. It's an asset, so it's having a debit balance. Debtors of 20,000. Then creditors, credit balance which is 22,000. Then we have purchases account. Purchases account expense, so debit balance, the amount is 35,000. Then sales account, it's an income, we are getting the amount. Incomes having a credit balance 53,000, take amounts carefully. Then we have returns outward account. Returns outward, that's other name for purchases returns. Purchases having a debit balance, so this would be having a credit balance. The amount is 500. Then we have returns inward, that's other name for sales return. Sales having a credit balance, so sales returns will be having debit balance 1,000. Then we have bills payable. Okay, bills payable means it's a document which shows the amount payable to creditors, to whom we have to pay. So, bills payable is a liability, it's having a credit balance, so 4,000 must come in the credit column. Then bills receivable, it's an asset, so debit balance 8,000. Then bank overdraft, it's a liability, so credit balance. What is the amount? Bank overdraft is 6,000. Then we have opening stock. Okay, stock in the beginning of the year is known as opening stock. What is the basic nature of stock? Stock means stock of goods. It is a current asset, so it's an asset, so it's having a debit balance. Now, what about if they say like closing stock? Both are having a debit balance, because whether it is opening or closing stock, it is stock of goods which is an asset. So, that will be having opening and closing stock will be having a debit balance. Opening stock 7,500. Bank overdraft account. Then wages. Okay, wages means it is an expense for you. The amount that we paid is known as not only wages, it can be any expense. The amount that we spent, all these are amount that we spent, like wages, salary, rent, all these are amount that the firm spent. Okay, if nothing is mentioned, and since you are the firm, you are supposed to pay wages, salary to your workers. And rent can be sometimes rent received also. If you have given your building, that means you will get rent on that. But if nothing is mentioned, just take it as expense. Understood? Commission also, if nothing is mentioned, you take it as commission paid. All these, if nothing mentioned, take it as expense. And expenses will be having a debit balance always. So, all these you write in the debit column 693. That is wages, then we have salary, and then we have rent. So, with that your trial balance is over, no? Is there anything else on the other page? No. Okay, so trial balance is over. Now, you can total these two sides, see whether it is getting tallied. Tallied means both sides you must get the same answer. So, here the total is 3,35,500. Don't just copy this, you just add and see whether you are getting the same answer, 3,35,500. Okay. See, since now you people are at home, I can't check whether you are using calculators or not. Don't use calculators, because I have no problem even if you use calculators. But the thing is, next year when you move to 12th standard and when you go for board exams, you will not complete accountancy exam if you don't have calculation speed. Even if you know the answer, you will not get time to write and complete the answers. So, make sure you don't use calculators and add all these figures. When you do illustrations also, don't simply copy it from the textbook. Just add and see whether you are getting the same answer, so that automatically your calculation speed will increase. Okay, so, this is for you people, not for me. We will just work out illustration 8 also. Illustration 8, always read the question, don't assume that the question will be to prepare the trial balance. Following balances were extracted means were taken from the books of Sri S. Pal, the date is given. You are required to do trial balance. There is one more sentence. The amount required to balance should be entered as capital. That means in this particular question, that is illustration 8, the capital figure is missing. If capital figure is missing in the question and they are asking you to enter the balance figure as capital, meaning is when you do the trial balance, will you get the same answer on both sides? No. For this question, you will not get the same answer. There would be a difference, and that difference you should write as capital. Understood? That is how the question is Yes, so we will do that. You write the heading and all, that is trial balance of Sri S. Pal as on 31st March 2019. Heads of accounts, LF, debit, credit. The first one is purchases, that you know it's an expense. So purchases account 1,70,000. The second one stock, and it is written stock on 1st April, that means opening, whether it is opening or closing, stock is an asset. So debit balance 24,000. Then sales, it's an income, so credit balance, it is 1,05,000. Then debtors, debit balance, in the debit column we must write 23,800. Discount received, all these you know, that's why I am not explaining, it's an income. So credit balance 3,500. Carriage outwards, okay, that is not a new term, but in this chapter we didn't discuss before. Carriage outwards, what is carriage? Carriage expenses means the transportation expenses. Carriage outwards means the transportation expenses incurred when you sell an item, that's called carriage outwards. Similarly, we have carriage inwards, the meaning is the transportation expenses incurred when we purchase goods. So both are transportation expenses, whether it is inwards or outwards, both are transportation expenses. Expenses will be always having debit balance. Understood? So just like opening and closing stock, whether it is inwards or outwards, both will be having a debit balance because it's an expense. The amount here is 700. The next one, cash in hand, it's an asset, so debit balance 3,500. Then machinery, okay, that is again an asset. $1,24,500. The next one is provision for depreciation on machinery, which is a new term for you. You know provision for doubtful debts or provision for bad debts, you all know. Okay. What do you mean by provision for bad debts? You remember that provision for bad debts, it's an amount that we keep aside out of profit to meet bad debts in case bad debts arises in future. That's a kind of loss for the firm. In order to meet that loss, in advance we will keep aside some amount as provision, that's called provision for bad debts. And you know that it can be used only for meeting bad debts. When it is provision for bad debts, it's a specific provision, it can be used only for that purpose. Similarly, here we have provision for depreciation on machinery. We know that every year depreciation will be deducted from the fixed asset. Depreciation means reduction in value of fixed assets due to wear and tear, obsolescence, passage of time and all. So there will be a decrease in value of fixed assets. So that's called depreciation. For providing depreciation, you will have to keep aside some amount out of the profit That's called provision for depreciation on machinery. There are different types of provisions like this. So, the provision nature is whether it is provision for bad debts, provision for depreciation or any other provision. The provision nature is liability. Now, what do you mean by liability? Liability means the amount payable by the firm. Here, are we paying something or should we pay something? If it is provision for bad debts, are we paying something? We are not paying anything actually. But even then it is considered as, this provision is considered as a liability because we are keeping aside this amount from your profit. If that was there as profit, you can use this amount for so many purposes, isn't it? But now when you keep it aside as provision, it can be used only for that particular purpose. So now we are losing something. You could have used it for so many purposes, but since you are keeping aside as provision, you are losing all those advantages. Because of this reason, provision is considered as a liability, not because it is payable amount. Actually, it is not payable amount, but since you are keeping it aside out of your profit, it is considered as a liability. So, provision is a liability, so it is having a credit balance. Okay, 24,200 is the amount. Then the next one, drawings. Okay, what is drawings? Drawings means the amount withdrawn by the owner for his purpose, personal use or personal purpose. So, we are the firm, from firm's point of view, we are losing something, isn't it? When they are or when the owner is withdrawing from our business, we are losing the cash balance. Sometimes he will take goods from us, so we are losing the goods which we have. So, we are losing something, so it is kind of expense for the firm, not because we are spending. Understood? Expense, the basic meaning is the amount that we paid or that we spent. Drawings means we are not spending anything, but even then it is kind of expense because we are losing our cash balance or we are losing our goods, the stock of goods which we had. Because of that, it is having a debit balance. It is having a debit balance, so the amount in the debit column 7,700. Then the next one is returns inward, that's other name for sales returns. Sales will be having credit balance, so sales returns debit balance. 3,500. Then we have premises. Premises means the building and its surroundings. So, it is a fixed asset for the firm. It is having a debit balance 5,28,000. Creditors, sundry creditors, you write sundry creditors. It is not sundry, it is sundry. Sundry creditors, credit balance 16,100. Discount allowed, yeah, that's a familiar term for you because we have learned trade discount, cash discount and all. Discount allowed means from firm's point of view, we are allowing, it's an expense for us. Discount received is income for us, discount allowed is expense for us. So, it's having a debit balance 2,800. Then carriage inwards, inwards and outwards both are expenses. So, debit balance. Amount is 1,400. Cash at bank, debit balance 17,500. General expenses again debit balance. To 100. Then bad debts written off. Writing off bad debts means we are cancelling. We are not expecting that debtors would make the payment. Because they are unable to pay, so we are writing it off or cancelling that amount. Bad debts, what's the nature of bad debts? It's a loss for the firm, so losses are having debit balance. 2450. Then provision for doubtful debts. Provision for doubtful means it is same as bad debts. It's other name for bad debts. Debts which are doubtful. That's called bad debts or provision for, you write the same term, doubtful debts. We have a doubt whether we will get the amount or not from debtors. That's why we are keeping a provision. 2,380 provisions are having a provision. The basic nature is a liability. So liability is having a credit balance. So 2380 in the credit column. Okay. Now the problem is over. Next what we have to do is, as usual, you just add your debit and credit sides. But will this trial balance tally? Tally means will this trial balance give same answer on both sides? No. That we know already, because the third sentence of the question says there would be a balance that should be written as capital. So you must have a last item, that is capital. The figure which we can't write now. For that you must add these two totals. The debit side, the total you will get like, just see whether you are getting the same answer. Debit side you would be getting 9,11,950, and credit side you will get like 1,51,180. Okay, 1,51,180. Okay, so check whether you are getting the same answer. Now there is a difference between your debit and credit side. That difference you can write as capital. So just find the difference. That means just minus this figure 1,51,180 from this 9,11,950. So the difference you will get like 7,60,770. That we will write as capital, and capital will be having a credit balance because it's a liability. $7,60,770. Yes. Now you can write the totals as same on both sides. Both sides will be getting, again you don't have to add, both sides you will be getting that 9,11,950. So in this question there is a difference in the pattern of question. We did the trial balance, everything the same way, but there was a missing figure. So the difference between the debit and credit sides we wrote as capital amount. Then we will get both sides as equal.